Oh, that's perfect. I wanted to chat about something that I did over the weekend, which was attend this Find Your Next Readers Summit. And it was free for, if you watch the videos live or within 24 hours, it was free. And then if you wanted to be able to have access to the videos at any time, and also there were like bonus classes and bonus materials as well, then you can pay to have an all access pass. And honestly, I think next time it could be worth it. I made a whole load of notes and I thought it'd be really cool to share some of the stuff that I learned with you, because I think some of these people might actually be worth following, and it was just really, really interesting. I think I counted that I made like 9 pages of notes, and that was me being conservative, okay? So each class was like called, it like had a name for it. And it was run by David Wallace, I think. Now, I've actually never heard of him, but he seems to be really, really good at what he does. He's also like an author, and he does a lot of this kind of stuff. And so he had invited lots of different types of people. It was really helpful in terms of like, there was loads of stuff on marketing and social media. And I think it was actually really beneficial no matter what path you go down for publishing. There was stuff there for specifically for indie authors, and there was stuff there for like hybrid authors or traditional authors. But apart from that, the rest of it was relevant to like everybody, because everybody has to market their own books no matter what sort of path you go down. So the first video that I watched, and indeed the first video that was up. Now, bearing in mind, I couldn't watch all of the videos because I didn't have time, and because I was limited to 24 hours, I just picked the ones that were relevant for me that I wanted to watch. But I think there would have been more that I would have watched had I had the all access pass. So that is something to bear in mind. But the first one was the Garbage Post Challenge, and this was done by Rachel May. So she's somebody who made up Golden May Editing, and her and I think there's a partner, and they do like social media stuff together and work with their authors to help them feel more comfortable and get their books out there. Anyway, so she had seen this thing by Simone Seol, I don't know if I'm saying that right, who talked about the Garbage Post Challenge. And essentially the idea is to post 100 pieces of content in 30 days. Now that can be like, it's no longer a tweet now, is it? But that can be like a tweet or a thread message, a newsletter, a post, a reel, a TikTok, all of those kind of stuff all counts towards as a piece. And the idea is not to be perfect, but to just get it out there so it can be utter garbage. And it's to get yourself feeling getting yourself used to and feeling more confident posting, because I know a lot of us feel quite self-conscious, and ironically a lot of creatives in terms of like writing, I feel, tend to be more introverted in nature. So it can be really awkward for us to present ourselves on camera for whatever reason that is, or to talk about our books, or just to be comfortable online. So this challenge was to try and get over that. So the more you do it, the more comfortable you'll feel. And I think it was feeding into that narrative that it doesn't have to be perfect. And recently I decided to do like a reel every day in August. It's not going to be quite every day because sometimes the weekends are difficult, and I did a post rather than a reel. But I'm trying to show up and show my readers who I am as like a writer and an author now, because I feel like I have changed and adapted. And I also wanted it to be more fun. I want it to be fun. I want it to be this fun, engaging platform for readers of like my genre. I want to share the books that I'm reading. I just want it to be more uniquely me and unapologetically me. So sorry about that. Hang on. I love a chai latte. So my friend, an author, we meet up in Costa, and she got me into chai lattes, and now I'm obsessed. Anyway, so that was the first session. The second session I watched was, I'm reading from my notes. As I said, I made like 9 pages of these. So one thing that will make a difference, email marketing. And this was with Sandra Beckwith. Don't know if I've written that name right. I will leave information down below on all the people that I watched and how you can like follow them. So this one I picked up on for email marketing. So, and she was talking about the different providers that there are and stuff like that. So that information I sort of already knew because I'm already with like MailerLite. But it was things like, so I've written down here to pull non-fiction nuggets from your fiction work. So for me, that can be quite difficult because I write fantasy. But for instance, like my newest work coming up is about like the Druids and stuff like that. So I wrote down just like a list of things like I could pull from. So I've got Druids, like Pinterest, like Pinterest boards, Celtic ties, linking that into family because I am from Celtic backgrounds. She also spoke about like comp books and genre books so that, you know, you've got that comparison so people can be like, oh yeah, I really like that book. I've also picked up on like something I could write about, so spice rating, because that's, I feel like it should be like a universal thing, but it's not really, is it? There's like that I could talk about, like the magic system, quizzes, things like that. And basically it was all like things to try and draw readers in and make it more conversational rather than just, hey, here's my book. So that was interesting. I've not written much for that one though. And then the next video was not one of my favourites, but I absolutely loved listening to the speaker. So she was What Makes a Book So Buzzworthy Readers Can't Stop Talking About It. This was by Mary Rose Wood. And honestly, she was in like an older lady. She's got loads of experience behind her, and I actually just really liked listening to her and her voice and her wisdom, and it was great. So she has a YouTube channel and she does like loads of like live things, which I am going to be subscribing to because, as I said, I absolutely loved listening to her. And so the biggest thing she said, the biggest thing you can do for like building buzz is word of mouth. So we spoke about, she talked about the key, and so I tried to draw like little keys. I can't draw. So we're talking about the actual book here and the actual writing. So, and she said that the story energy has to be baked into the premise. It has to be an easy clarity. So basically that's being able to like express your story in like one sentence. That doesn't make the story simple, but the premise is easily identifiable. And it has to be intriguing. And then the second sort of key was a cause of big emotions in the reader. So we remember how we feel. We don't necessarily remember the book or what happened, but we remember how we feel. So what she was talking about was like focusing more on reader emotions when they're reading. What emotions do you want to evoke from your reader? So I've put notes down here like, where are the big emotions coming from? Are they invested in the character? And it has to be high stakes. It doesn't necessarily have to be like high stakes in terms of like death. For fantasy that probably is the high stakes, but in high stakes for that character. I went on to the next page. So she made a note about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which I was familiar with in terms of my psychology degree anyway. But in case you're not aware, it's that it's like a triangle of needs. And your first needs are your very, very common needs in terms of like what you need to survive, and then you work your way up the pyramid. So the hierarchy of needs. So in terms of things like the things that your characters should be striving for and what readers strive for is survival, then connection, and then social status. And that was such a really interesting comment that she talked about. And I really want to sort of find out what else she has to say about that specific thing, because I felt it was really, really, really interesting. She went on a little bit more, but I'm trying to sum up the main points here. So she said to yourself, ask that question, what's at stake? And then we talked about iconic characters, and it was interesting because David Wallace he was interviewing, so during this process, and he talked about how Gollum is such an iconic character in Lord of the Rings, but he's not the main character, but everyone can tell you about Gollum. And so she said, like, iconic characters, the whole point is that they're not just there in the background, is that there's this journey of transformation, and that's for all your characters that need to have an impact on your reader. Your reader is going to feel for those characters if there is a journey of transformation, you know, and supporting characters also need to have that as well. And then I've also put a note here saying it's the journey, not the end. And that is the thing. If it's not the end point that readers want to get to, it's that journey to get there. Otherwise, we would just read the end of the book and then not bother. So that was a really, really interesting talk. And I say she was so insightful to listen to. She was really clear, really concise. She just seemed to know like a lot of stuff. She just seemed to be like a well of knowledge. It was brilliant. So I'm just going to have a little sip of my chai. Okay, so the next video I watched was Ignite Your Fan Base, Methods to Attract Super Fans. And this was by Jessie Cow. And I thought it was interesting because you do want to have super fans, don't you? These are the people that will read everything you put out. So we talked about, and she sort of has a lot of things for like writing hacks for authors. So I will link that down below. So there are 3 things to do to try and attract your super fans or to start attracting them. So it's your newsletter, reviews, and social media. Okay, so I haven't actually written that much for this one. So we spent a lot of time talking about reviews. And one thing that she suggested was like copying and pasting your reviews into like that ChatGPT, the AI. So if you put all your reviews into that AI, then you can ask it to generate a list of things that are like common amongst the reviews, because when you reap those positive features, you can then go, oh, that works. Let me put it into my next book. Oh, these things are things that readers really loved. I need to be doing that again. That's what she meant by reviews. Also, you can do that in a negative way as well. So put in all the negative reviews and ask it to pull out some common features so you know what's not working well. And then you can also use like those keywords in terms of the positive reviews in things like the promo and the ads, because these are things directly that your readers like, which I thought was actually quite interesting. So that was a good one as well. So the next video I watched was about connecting through captions, building authentic reader relationships. Now this was done by Lara Ferrari. She's part of Lemon Friday, which I used to be a part of before one of them had a baby, and so she's like on maternity leave and went off to do that. But Lara is like sort of rebranding Lemon Friday, and it's specifically helping authors to promote and be themselves on social media. Really, really good. So she talked about sort of this AAA cocktail formula in terms of your captions, which is attention, attraction, and action. So the attention is basically your hook. And we all know that on Instagram, you only get that first line and people have to select more to read the whole caption. So that needs to be punchy. It's a hook, like writing a book. And then the next bit, attraction, is that storytelling, that middle part of the caption. And the action is sort of your invitation, your call to action, asking your readers to do something. And she spoke about the action being really simple, really concise, and only one thing, because if it's too many things, your readers aren't going to actually do that action. So there are 2 biggest things that she said to take into account. One of them was knowing your ideal reader. There was a lot of stuff during this little summit about your ideal reader and creating like reader profiles and stuff like that, which is interesting. But I think the idea is that you're posting to sort of one ideal person rather than like the masses. And the second thing she spoke about is like, why are you posting? The biggest things, because when you just post because you feel like you have to, I think it does come across. Oh, look at the state of my hair. I think it does come across in your captions, in your posts, when you're just posting because you feel like you have to. So the whole the 3 goals you should have when posting should be around like building connections, building excitement for your book, and building community. If you're not doing one of those things, then what is the point of being there, is essentially what we spoke about. The next session was about reading your future reader's mind, how to revise like a reader. This was by Mary Adkins. And there were I've put 3 different things that I've only literally, that's how short this video is, but there were 3 key things. And it was your writing mindset, your reading mindset, and your editing mindset. Now, the reason why I didn't do much here is because I realized I actually did what she was suggesting to do, which is to revise like a reader. So when you read through your work, you're very tempted to edit as you go along. And one of the things I do is send it to my Kindle to read, to get that idea of the story, to focus on the story elements rather than the editing elements, which of course you are editing. But in terms of like line edits and copy edits, you're not doing that yet. You're doing the revising like a reader. What's taken the reader on a journey? Are your characters going through a transformation and things like that? So that was really interesting. I will leave her links down below because whilst I find myself doing this naturally, the way she spoke about it gave me some questions and things to make sure I'm doing it more purposefully and mindfully. So I'll leave the links down below. The next video was mastering the audience equation to find your one-click readers. This was by Sue Brown Moore. So the audience equation is basically about finding your voice as an author. So we don't choose books, we choose experiences, and that linked into the other video I spoke about. So whose lives can I enrich? That's the questions that you want to be asking. You're not going to please everyone. You want to find your one-click readers. So she talks about the emotional beats, the technical beats, and the content beats. And these are like the 3 pillars of sort of finding your voice. So your emotional beats could be things like your cliffhangers. Are you angsty? Is that sort of like your voice? The technical beats is things like your word count, the grammar, which rules are you going to break? We're looking for consistency across books so that your authors know what to expect. And I think there was a comparison, something like Nora Roberts. If I was to read Nora Roberts, which I started reading when I was like 14, by the way, I know what to expect. She has emotional beats that hit every time. She writes the same. If you're reading the same sort of book, she's got some new content, which I'm struggling to get into because it's new. And like, you know, I know in content wise, I know the story. Generally speaking, if she has like a trilogy, there's like 3 couples, and anyway, I just love it. But you know what to expect. And there are certain authors that you read that you know what to expect. And that's what you're after. You're after that experience when you read that book. So that was all about her. Very interesting. The next one I watched was Starting an Author Newsletter by Kat Caldwell. So I've already started my newsletter, but I do think it's an area that I want to strengthen and work on. So things like be yourself and asking yourself, how often do you want to write? Now, at the moment, I do monthly, if I remember. Not if I remember, but sometimes it's difficult. I don't think I could do it more often. What she was talking about, like those first few emails, and Tammy Lebrecht is like a goddess when it comes to newsletters, and she's got some books out, and so Kat actually recommended reading those, and I have read part of them, but I also would recommend those. So you have your welcome sequence, which should be all about you as an author. So the first thing you've got is introducing yourself using your personality, maybe asking readers or those that are subscribed if you have anything in common. And then always give permission to unsubscribe. And she said she actually makes it quite big in her newsletters, especially in the welcome sequence, because you don't want people staying in your list that aren't there for you and your books, because they're just taking up numbers. And we all know that when you reach certain numbers, you have to pay for certain things. So you don't want people just taking up space for the sake of it. And you also don't want just freebie seekers staying there, because they're not going to actually be your ideal reader. So then she says to use another email to talk about your writing, like sort of the themes, the emotions, sort of the tropes, etc. that you write. Again, use another email to talk about your books. So you're sort of separating them out. So if you haven't got a backlist, you wouldn't talk about your books. But you can talk about the sort of things that you write and what your readers can expect from you. And that links into that other session about being consistent with your voice across your books. And then you can also, so end the email sequence and, and basically your reader is now an official member of your newsletter, and end it with something personal, like what did you want to be when you grew up, and something funny, something unique, something that makes it more personable and makes you feel more real, which I really liked. And I have put with exclamation marks around it, you only want people who read your genre. And what she meant by that is if you're an author that writes lots of different genres, generally speaking, you're probably going to want different newsletters. And also a big point was one topic per newsletter. Now, I think this is more for people that do like weekly newsletters. So, and then she talked about a difference between your lead magnet and your reader magnet, which I really, really liked, and it made it a bit clearer in my head. So your lead magnet is for your cold subs, whereas your reader magnet is for your warm subs. So by that, if it's a reader magnet for your warm subscribers, it could be something where the reader has finished reading a book and then there's like a bonus epilogue or a bonus chapter or something like that. And you can say, if you want to read this bonus, blah, 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 from the story that you've just read, sign up for my newsletter and it'll download. And then you've got your lead magnet, which is what you would promote widely. And it might be something like a free book, a free novella, maybe a prequel story, something like that. So that's to draw in lots of new readers. And then your reader magnet is somebody who's already read your book, and you want to secure them as a subscriber so they can read more books, and that's something for them to read. Also, we spoke a lot about creating conversation by asking a question, which is something that I think I want to do more of. So the next, I'm gonna have to take a drink, hang on. The next the next class that I watched was Automating Book Marketing for Busy Authors. And this was by Cameron Clarkson. Now, this was really interesting and I have a lot of questions about it. So basically about using AI, which I know is a big thing at the moment in the community in terms of like AI art and even AI books. And it's a big no-no for me. But what he spoke about could be interesting. They have this AI system for authors. So you buy into the program and it will generate things like simple but optimated landing pages. It could generate like images and keywords and prompts for social media and things like this. It did seem really interesting. Now, he's from Book Blaster, so if you're interested, go and have a look at Book Blaster. I have actually emailed and asked about their AI system in terms of privacy and terms and conditions. So the 3 questions I asked and I haven't received a response yet. So the first one was, what happens to my work? If I upload my entire manuscript to get all this stuff, what happens to it? Is it used to train the AI and feed into other people's outputs? Because that's not what I want. And then the other question that I asked pertaining to this was, how is it learning? How is it, because the other AI platforms, they basically scrape and take all the data that's inputted to it and use it to form other people's output. And what I didn't want was to be accused later down the line that I've used somebody's work without appropriate compensation or credit and stuff like that. So I didn't want to be getting output that other people's work has been fed into, if that makes sense. So I have emailed and I will update on if they email back. But it did seem interesting, and the sort of the idea of it I really liked, and it was specifically for authors, for marketing and sort of that. So then the next one was definitely relevant for indie authors because it was Book Marketing for Indie Authors by Brian Burney. I'll be honest, I did skip a lot of this video. It was late at night for me, but he talked about like the biggest, your biggest platform is like Amazon. He also did speak about Apple and Kobo and maybe Google, but apparently that's just not as big. But Kobo is apparently like growing every day. So he talked about if you don't go direct to them, there's basically two biggest like aggregators, which is Ingram Spark and Draft Digital. And Ingram Spark is your best chance of getting into like a, you know, like a brick and mortar bookshop. But even that's difficult. There's a lot of issues and things surrounding that. So I've put down here 2 to 3 a year, 2 to 3 books a year is what he said. And yeah, and he talked about Amazon ads. It felt like a very basic class, but it was still sort of interesting. It was relevant, but it was sort of like, hey, yeah, you need to write 2 to 3 books a year, and you need to go via these people, and you basically need to use Amazon ads. And so it was there was some information to draw from it, but I don't think that was as relevant. So when it said Book Marketing for Indie Authors, it was basically, where can you sell your books? So yeah. Next one. Then I watched a masterclass on writing an email. This was done by David Wallace himself. And he spoke about, there was a few people that he recommended like learning from or reading about. So I'll put those in the comments down below. But he said in your email, you need the hook, the story, and the call to action, which is basically always asking your reader to do something and not always about selling. So again, we're building that community. So that was a really interesting masterclass, and there was more information about like how to write an email and like what sort of things would be good to include and what sort of things wouldn't be, like things like limiting your I language, which I think makes sense. And how also people love polls and questionnaires, so definitely. Then the next one I watched was about finding your ideal readers of Instagram, practical strategies. This was by Julie Tyler Ruiz. Don't know if I'm saying that right, but so she was talking again about identifying your ideal reader, that persona, you know, sort of like what do they want out of a reading experiences, what values do they have, you know, what are their lives like right now that puts them in the perfect position to be reading your book and gaining value from it and stuff like that, thinking about their social, emotional and professional sort of statuses, which we should probably all be doing more of. And then this is the last class that I took that I had time to take, and I'm glad I ended it on this. So I basically clicked on this video because the title sounded really interesting, and it was Creative Shadow Work as Key to Connection. Well, I was like, what the frick is creative shadow work? So this was by Kristen Kiefer, and she has like a podcast called Wild Making, I think. My pen was running out. So I'll put those links down below because I actually felt that she was a really engaging speaker. She was really clear, concise. I liked her voice and her pitch and her tone. It was wonderful. So she talked about the 4 cornerstones of effective marketing, which is finding your ideal readers, engaging your ideal readers, building trust and safety with your ideal readers, and then building trust and safety with yourself. And I've written down here, cultivating belief in the importance of your work and your capacity to share it with ease, which again links in with lots of the other classes that I've watched about being yourself and finding your unique readers, because not everybody is going to like your work. And what you need to do is not appeal to everybody, but appeal to the people that will read your books. So she said, to build a thriving and dedicated readership, you need the capacity to connect deeply with your people. And deep connection often requires vulnerability and self-love. And this is where it gets a little bit like therapy. FYI, I may have had a tear at the end of this video. So your people want your impact, not your perfection. And I think that is such a massive quote that I may have to print it and put it on my wall. I'll repeat it again. Your readers want your impact, not your perfection. This idea of being perfect and showing up in a perfect ideal isn't going to get us anywhere. Then it moved on to what is your creative shadow? And so what I've just spoke about was like the backbone, the foundation for what she was talking about today in her class, which was creative shadow work. But what is your creative shadow? I had no idea, but I was definitely intrigued. So, and the answer to that is your creative shadow comprises the fears, desires, and traits related to your writing that you've repressed out of shame. So she said to ask yourself, when you talk to people about your books or somebody asks you about your books, what feels awkward about that? And I put, my answer was judgment. I always fear judgment. I've got such an innate need to please people. I think that was key. I fear judgment, so I'm not always putting myself out there in the way that I want to. So she's asked, in what ways did I perceive to fail when measuring up against other people? So perceive to fail. So basically, when I compare myself to other authors, how am I coming out lacking? What is it specifically that I think I failed at? Because that's normally what I've repressed and kept in the shadows. So when people have criticised your writing, which stung the most? So what things stung the most when people criticised your writing? Again, that's normally linked to something that you've buried and is deep and you're ashamed of, guilty, whatever. And then she asked, ask yourself, what are your biggest pet peeves? What aggravates you what aggravates you the most about other people's writing or marketing? And here's the key, is that she said that's normally something that you feel yourself that you are repressing and that you would like to be more of. So she spoke about, are people silly and goofy online, and are you judging that? But actually secretly you are silly and goofy, but you feel like you've had to repress it. So she's given 4 questions for integrating your creative shadow. So to ask yourself, what is the kernel of truth in this aspect of my shadow? What's the hidden lie in this aspect of my shadow? What is good about this aspect of my shadow? And what loving words does this aspect of my shadow need to hear? And that's all I've written, but I think one of the examples she gave me was that, so she did run through quite a few examples. And one of the ones that really hit me was that fear of being judged. And she was like, not everyone is going to like your work. So yes, you are going to be judged. That's the kernel of truth. But the lie is that everybody's going to hate it. Not everybody is going to hate it. There will be someone that loves your book. And then it was things like, those loving words and things like that. And what's good about it is, if certain people are going to like your book, you can tailor your marketing to those people. That's the good thing. If you market to everybody, you're probably not going to find your readers. If you market to your readers, they are the people that's going to read your book and like it. So rather than trying to please everybody, you're only trying to please those people that you're intending to please, because not everybody is going to like your book. And the loving words and things like that I think I need to give to myself are things like, it's okay to be myself. It's okay to show that, because somewhere out there's going to be people that resonate with me and want to connect with me and who I am as a reader and a writer. And it's those people that I want to appeal to make them feel less alone. Growing up, reading was my escape. And so I am so fixated on fiction and fantasy and romance and the possibilities. And I need to find those other readers. And now, as a writer, my writing is getting closer to what I read. So I read a lot of NA stuff, smutty stuff, spicy stuff, dark stuff. I read everything supernatural, so the fae, the vampires, everything else, because it takes me out of the real world, and that's the audience that I need to find and be myself. And I am a little bit goofy, but I shouldn't be worried about that because somebody is going to judge me somewhere. And, you know, I shouldn't be worried about shouting about my work because I'm proud of my work. I shouldn't be ashamed of liking dark romance and spicy stuff, like, you know. And I've been following some people online that have, there's actually someone, I think, Spicy Book Dragon, I think is her handle, and all she talks about is spicy books, and I love it. And all these sort of book accounts that I've been following for reading regs, and they are unashamed to say what books they like and get out there. And actually, by being open about themselves, they are finding their ideal readers, because I'm one of, well, they're finding their ideal audience because I'm part of their audience, and I'm like, nearly every book I'm adding to my TBR. So anyway, that is the Find Your Readers Summit. Now, some of these people had like free like downloads for you as part of like having the free pass. If you had the all access pass, then there was extra downloads and extra resources. There were also extra bonus masterclasses and things like that. And you can then watch the videos at any time. So I had the free pass, which meant I got the free resources and all the links. I had access to all the videos, but only for 24 hours, and it spanned 4 days. So that was quite tricky for me to follow them. But I think next time I probably would consider the all access pass. And if you get in early enough, you get the discount, the early bird discount, because then it does mean I can watch those videos at my own leisure and go back to them, because that creative shadow work especially I would go back to. And you'd get access to more bonus masterclasses and more bonus materials that were created specifically for the all access pass. So I'll leave all the links that I have down below. I'll leave some of the people that I want to follow, that I really enjoyed listening to their talks. These videos that I spoke about today, that's not all the talks. There were at least 10 of the talks that I didn't get to. So there was a lot. And as I said, I think this is relevant to both indie and trad and hybrid authors. A lot of it was relevant to us all. There were a few videos that were relevant to like specific people, but most of it was relevant to everyone. So it was actually such a good like summit to be a part of. And yeah, so that's what I wanted to talk about today. I know it's been a long video because there's been a lot of content to talk about, but there's some fab people for you to go and follow, and I hope you have gained something from my little ramble about the summit, and I will see you next time. So bye guys.